Hello, everybody. Many thanks for joining us on a very, very, I'd say it's stretching it to call it autumnal. We're almost into a wintry night here, and it's great to have so many people join us. I'm absolutely delighted for this first session of ILMI's series of events called Smashing It to be joined by Mat Fraser and Catherine Gallagher. I'm going to pass over to Catherine in 2 seconds. She's going to act as MC. She's going to ask Mat a series of questions. Mat is kind enough to agree to spend 40 minutes in our company, so we get to hear him in action. We're going to ask that people keep their microphones on mute to allow the conversation to flow as much as possible. And Mat has agreed that we can record this for anyone who is unable to participate. We're aiming to finish at around 7:40. So on that basis, I'm going to stop talking. I just want to thank Catherine and Mat for their time. I also want to really thank Nina Byrne, who has organised today and the other series of events, which are part of a series of celebrations of 30 years of independent living in Ireland, which leads up to the publication of our book, Conversations about Activism and Change, which will be formally launched on the 1st of December. So a series of events celebrating disabled people who are smashing it, who are tearing up the script, leading up to the launch of our own book celebrating 30 years of independent living in Ireland. So on that basis, Catherine, I'll pass over to you. Hope everyone enjoys the event.
Well, thanks so much, as Damien was saying, to everyone for tuning in, and of course to Mat for joining us this evening, our star-studded guest, and all of us here in ILMI are absolutely thrilled to have you here this evening. And the work that you've done to achieve real representation over the span of your career is incredible and absolutely and truly activism in action. And I'm hoping between myself and yourself over the next while that we can explore some of that together.
Right.
And you have many feathers to your bow, Mat. You've described yourself as an actor, writer, drummer. We can see your drums in the background. Musician, cabaret performer, convention chair, conference host, absolutely everything and anything. Is there anything that you can't do?
Loads of things. Not interrupt a woman. Apparently, I'm not very good at that. No, I mean, there's loads. I'm a jack of all trades, you know, and master of none, resultantly. There's plenty I can't do, but most of the things you listed that I do, I don't really do to expert level. And what do they say? To reach an expert level, you have to have done something for 10,000 hours. That's what drummers say. And it works, I think, in most areas, if you think about it, with study periods and, you know, and professions and stuff. And I can't claim to have done any of them for 10,000 hours. And also, it was more sequential. You know, I mean, I was a cabaret performer quite a lot for 10 years, but I hadn't done any of that for like 5 years. So I didn't all do all of them things at the same time. But yeah, loads I can't do, as any of my friends and loved ones will be able to tell you. Currently, can't put my shoes on with my hands. Mary's laughing at me, of course, right now, and as are all the other thalidomide people that I know, because I was one of the few people, Catherine, that didn't learn, short arm people, sorry. So my body is otherwise regular, except that I have short arms that are 10 and 11 inches long, respectively, with inward turning hands with no thumbs, for any visually impaired or blind people experiencing this. And because I've just had new hip surgery, so I've got a new left hip, next one's coming, right one's coming in next January. But I always used to lean down to try and put my socks on. So for you, that would be put your foot over your knee and then get your opposite elbow to your opposite big toe. And that would be the lean I used to have to do. Can't do it now with a new hip. So I've been learning to put my socks on with my feet. A month ago, it took me 20 minutes. Today, it took me 3 minutes. So I'm getting better. You didn't need to know that, sorry.
Well, congratulations on the new hip from one artificial hip person to another. But speaking of all the feathers to your bow, so to speak, and everything that you have done, and you mentioned there, you know, music and being a drum player.
Yeah.
How did you fall into, or maybe it wasn't a case of falling, maybe it was very intentional, of becoming an actor in the first instance?
Well, the acting actually is because both my father, who died when I was 21, and my mother, who's still alive and about to star in an Irish film, which I'll tell you about in a minute, were both actors. So I grew up doing line runs and being backstage because it was cheaper than childcare, and stuff like that. So the theatre and acting is in my blood, literally, and I was born on tour, you know, as it were, almost. So when I came out as a disabled person when I was 30-ish, which one of our participants was directly responsible for, Mary Duffy, it was her poem Whole that set me on that journey. I couldn't, once I had become a new person, the emancipated, disabled and proud of it Mat Fraser, rather than the, you know, denying it guy, I had to change everything. And I had been a musician in a reggae band where the message was, you know, let's have a party, life's shit, the government are awful, but let's just all get stoned and have a party. Which is fine. And, you know, if the young people want to do that when they're at a festival, good luck to them. But after a while, you know, when you're political, and I became very political and I needed to talk about my disability, that became an inappropriate arena for what I wanted to talk about. And so I left and got into performance poetry. And then Grey Eye Theatre Company came along and I saw a play of theirs. I had always thought, okay, we'll just quickly go back to when I was 13. I used to fancy a woman called Carol Ann Proctor, a girl called Carol Ann Proctor. But when I auditioned with the English teacher, Mr. Slade, who liked me, because they always used to direct the school play, didn't they, the English teachers, I could see he was embarrassed by my suggestion that I would audition. It didn't really land with me properly until I was auditioning and I saw Carol Ann Proctor laughing. And mistakenly, perhaps, I don't know, I never really found out the truth, thought that she was laughing at me for the very notion of daring to be on a stage with my disability. Very sensitive boy. And so that was what had prevented me from following in the family footsteps. Cut forward to being 32, emancipated as a disabled person, finally with a disabled voice. And I go and see Grey Eye Theatre Company, which is literally wall-to-wall disabilities, spitting cake at each other. I can't understand the guy with cerebral palsy at first. You know, it's all over the shop. And the entire audience, most of whom were non-disabled, able-bodied looking, were laughing and not embarrassed. And it was a non-religious epiphany for me that night. I thought, oh my God, this is what I want to do. That I'm all about communication. And if you want social change through communication, you're going to end up in drama, probably, aren't you? Or you know, ballot boxing or what have you. And so that's how I fell into it. And I sort of rocked up, asked if I could audition for Grey Eye. They looked at this weird guy with 2-foot-long dreadlocks and short arms, stinking of pot. And well, I'm not sure, but I could learn lines because it was in the family. And I did it. And, you know, a year later, I cut off my dreads, joined the company and began to become the person that you've now met. Sorry, a long answer, mate. Sorry.
Well, listen, this is what we're here for. We're here to listen and to learn.
And everything's so interconnected. And there are reasons for so many things that you need debriefing in order for the listener to understand the context. And thus the importance of the threads of the interconnectedness, that I always end up doing those super long answers. So apologies. If you want something more direct, you have to tell me.
No, listen, it's all good. It's all gravy. One of the things kind of threading or teasing something out a little bit from what you said.
Yeah.
There is, you know, growing up, I think a lot of maybe people in the room or in the virtual room or the virtual audience have this experience of growing up and not seeing people that have similar experiences to us, and this kind of idea, if you can see it, you can be it. And I think you've said elsewhere that, you know, when it came to performance up until that point when you became involved in the Grey Eye Theatre, that I think, now correct me if I'm wrong at any stage, of course, but I think you said elsewhere that you felt you didn't have the language to describe how it felt being in spaces and you know, when you became involved with kind of you said you were very political, becoming involved in disability politics and the social justice kind of, you know, aspect of disability, and in, you know, being immersed in safe, open, disabled spaces that you found that language and found that kind of community and piecing things together. Is that true, or am I off the mark entirely?
You're not off the mark or romanticizing it in any way. Artistically, that was exactly the case. If I hadn't have been given the safe spaces, and by safe space, I mean an environment created by disabled people, for disabled people, in this instance, this is what I mean, to explore what the hell their voice is going to be, the London Disability Arts Forum, as they were then, and Grey Eye Theatre Company afforded me those spaces with the workshops they were leading and doing. And I don't think I would have found my voice so quickly or so resolutely had it not been for that. Because, you know, I grew up mainstreamed. I was the only disabled kid in this school. I had no disabled friends, blah, blah, blah. It's a familiar story to a lot of us, right? And we know this now because we've read enough writing about our own history. That so I bought, or was given, a reality of understanding of disability that didn't fit with how I felt. So I didn't have any language because the two things were incompatible with each other. It wasn't until had the social model explained to me and saw disability as a social political movement for change in the way that feminism, Free Mandela, gay rights had been, and all these things are completely different, but we do share some similarities in that the paternalistic mainstream don't want us to have our own emancipated voice, or traditionally did not. That the two things went hand in hand. But I'm ferociously political, Catherine, and I'm also aware that a lot of people aren't, but are wonderful artists who need articulation as well. And I don't want to say to you guys, you can't do proper disability art unless you're completely politically on board with da-da-da-da-da. I mean, it's kind of what I think, but I can't actually say that because it cuts out a lot of people who might bring brilliant art to it. And I think something that we've learned in the last 20 years of disability arts is that, you know, the social model doesn't do it for everybody. No model is 100% completely describing everybody. And some people find that, you know, that doesn't work for them. I still think it's the best one that we've got. And given the other understanding that disability have not really done us very well in terms of emancipating our identities and freedoms, it's the best one going. So what you said is completely the case. And I would encourage any arts body who are suspicious that it might be that they need to give people safe spaces to develop their voices, to get the kind of work that they'd like to see in the mainstream. That's what happens. Rosalind McDonough, I don't know if she's watching. She contacted me earlier to say that she's been ill. She's had an accident and she may not attend, and that's fine. You know, I mean, wow, look where she's ended up. You know, it's gone really well. She's got what a voice. You know, and I'm aware that we all used to bicker with each other 15 years ago. Arts Disability Ireland, over here, over there. There were so few of us. You know, there was so little money going around. Of course, we were going to start bickering with each other. But now that the mainstream have allowed us to like spread out in amongst them, I think it's wonderful. So, I mean, I think that Rosalie's story is another developmental story that had it not been for certain environments that she was allowed to get to, she wouldn't have been able to bring her full voice to the mainstream. We all do it in different ways with different journeys. But yes, Catherine, I could have just gone yes, couldn't I? But I had decided I'd talk for 12 minutes instead. Sorry.
You're okay. There's no.
I mean, I don't know, Porrig. I mean, and I don't know of another way of doing it, Catherine. You know, so many of us are disenfranchised, by which I think that means isolated, alone, and unable to get their voice heard. That desperate times bring desperate measures. So, I mean, any kind of technique that will get the bods into the room. If the Sisters of Eternal, whatever, I'm not going to denigrate the system that you have in Ireland. I know that it's a lot more complicated and tied in with the church, social functions and stuff. I understand that. But, you know, if you find yourself with people that you don't entirely agree with wholeheartedly in terms of how we came to be in the world, and they've provided the funding for a week of self-identity discovery, I'm not going to be the one picketing outside. I'm going to be the one getting on with the workshop. I used to be the one who thought they would need to picket. I think I've learned in my wise old time as I get a bit older, such that it is that it's probably best to do the workshop sometimes than always do the picket. But then,
this was actually something I was going to ask you towards the end, but it's actually lend itself. I'm going to ask it now. You mentioned there that the social model of disability, and it's something in ILMI that comes up all the time, and of course language comes up quite a lot as well. And there's the schools of thought that will say, that language, informs framing and the worldview and perspective that someone holds on disability. And as well, language is a journey for each individual person. And you were saying there about getting whether it's the literal or the figurative bodies in the room to get people on board. In order to get the message across, do you think it's fair enough to say, well, we'll compromise on how we describe disabled people, be it identity first or person first, in order to achieve, the common goal, or to get the funding or to get the opportunity? Or do you think that groups can and should be unapologetic in that, or do you think we need to consider a bit of wiggle room on that?
Well, I've learned that every individual situation is different, and I can't really give you a blanket answer to that, because there are different situations, the nuances of which I can never understand. I'd love to say that I agree with you, but I did just tweet 3 hours ago when somebody started going off about putting brackets around the dis of disabled.
I saw that,
literally started swearing at them on Twitter. So I obviously haven't grown out of it. So my heart says no, but my mind goes, yeah, you're probably right. And is that because I'm an old, stuck in my ways kind of guy? Probably a little bit. My glory days were the realization that we could intervene if we collectivized, and we stopped Parliament Square. We got rights. It's all in the then Alamet Barbara film. Those are my glory days. So that's the answer. In my historical emotion, revolution is the answer to all problems. But it ain't, is it? You've got to go at the table with the person that voted Tory at the last election, because they're the one with the funding. Yes. And Catherine, yes, I have done that. I've compromised for funding. Of course I have. I think any professional artist who's been around for 20 years probably has at some point. And that's, hopefully okay. I like saying, I've never minded getting box ticking work, by which I mean, I only got the job because I'm the disabled person they need to show that they employed. As long as the work itself has the potential to be good, then that can flip the mindset of the people that booked you for the wrong reason. And so the picketing, revolutionary, always angry all the time guy that I used to be might have missed that. So swings and roundabouts, play each option as you find it, have both, feelings and thoughts, and try and get a happy marriage between the two. The goal is getting us visible and heard on drama and on TV, so that life can imitate art. That we are limited to an academic discussion about the wording of our situation, when we should have a litany of 25 years of films about it, that each individual nuanced situation was just broken down over 2 hours, and we got right into it and delved into it, connected it to our mainstream family. Every viewer in the land would have a nuanced and sophisticated understanding of disability by that point. We wouldn't need, what model are we doing? Everyone would understand everything. So Ralph and Katie, which was on BBC recently, with the two leads who've got Down syndrome, watching a couple of episodes of that is better than having a conversation about Down syndrome, I think. And it used to be that they didn't want us, and now they're learning that perhaps they might like us. And I'm lucky enough to be one of those people that's been pushing so hard for so long. I'm at the door when they open it, going, "Who's there?" I'm going, "I'm here." So this is what I'm trying to do. So I've gone less into what's important about the wording to describe various states of disability, and more into, can we just get the damn thing on TV? Because, you know, nothing's going to be perfect, but flipping hell, we need visibility, we need discussion, we need to hear our voices, we need to see our faces and our weird bodies and the different way we behave and talk, and get for everyone to get used to it. And that'll do so much more work than the stuff we're doing. Having said that, everything starts at grassroots, and community drama groups are where it all starts for me. It's where it started for me. I mean, I remember my time doing my one-man play at that art centre in a part of Dublin that was described to me as so dangerous that when I said I was going to go to that pint over there, they went, don't go to that pub. They went holes in it, and it was, I don't know, I'm afraid I've forgotten the area of Dublin, but man, in the atmosphere inside the art centre was cooking with disability angst and interest. Unfortunately, the funding wasn't around at the time, but I believe it's getting better. Is disability arts funding getting better in Ireland? Well, it kind of got worse, can it? So of course it is.
It's I think there's been there's been a lot of discussion here on this side of the water on general funding for everyone, disabled and non-disabled. And one thing that some people might be familiar with in the audience, excuse me, is a scheme,
excuse me,
a pilot scheme that was introduced called the Basic Income for Artists. And this was a randomized basic income sort of support payment. But the difficulty with kind of support payments like that, while great in theory, you know, like a kind of a blanket foundation weekly payment, and while it's a pilot scheme at the minute, the difficulty when it comes to kind of going from job to job or gig to gig and is the means testing, that the means testing over here. So a lot of disabled people in Ireland couldn't apply for the basic income because the support payment was going to be above the threshold, and their means tested support payments. So that's a huge issue here. I'm not sure if that's the case in the UK.
Well, I'm lucky enough not to need the support of state funding anymore, and I don't personally think it's appropriate for me to apply to it when there ain't enough to go round. But it's bloody desperate, and that catch-22 situation of applications against mean testing and thresholds and limits is indeed the case. Yes, absolutely, and it's terrible. You know, all I can say to aspiring disabled artists is, if you have the wherewithal and the possibilities to create your art at home, whether that be painting and making fine art, as Mary has done and does do, as me writing on my computer, you know, visualizing and imagining finished pieces of art and trying to make them so, you know, just keep going, keep at it. You know, Rosaline, when I met her, was really down in the dumps. I don't know if anybody here knew Donald Tooley, but they were very good friends, and his death had really cut her up, and she hadn't been creating any art and was going in on herself. And I just happened to find her and liked her voice and asked her to write a bit of work that ended up not being in a project I was doing, but it rekindled her interest in art and writing. And that was 3 years ago. And now she's had a play on at the Abbey. I mean, you know, so what I'm saying is times get really desperate, and they get really desperate for disabled people. You know, all the problems that disenfranchised, poor, alienated, othered people have, plus the physical impairments and you know, all the sensory and all the barriers that we face that are because of our disability added to that, would put a lot of people off. But obviously we know we are more resilient than non-disabled people. I said the N-word, they're normal. And we have to bring that resilience to play, because, you know, the odds are against us, stacked hardly against us, and we have to try and do what we can. And when we need help, we have to go to our community and help. You know, as I lamented to my wife the other day, the state of the feckin' world is almost so bad I could commit suicide from desperation at how evil the rich people are and how desperate the poor people are. All we can do is go to our own community and create it in our own immediate environment. And if we all do that, which is all we can do, then some things will get better. And I think in terms of art and local communities and disability, I think this is a case in point where there are little pockets of community that can hopefully encourage the artists to keep producing their art. Because times they are a changing, and it is only 5 to 10 years away before we are shot through all of art, all television, all film, all radio, all music will be there. I know I said that 10 years ago. I know I said that 20 years ago. I know I said that 30 years ago. Damn, I know I said that 40 years ago. But no, I didn't, 30 years ago. But it's true this time because I feel the winds have changed. Things are changing. The amount of disabled people you're going to see on television and in films in 2023 will be exponentially more than it was last year. So artists out there at the desperation point of giving up, please don't give up. Please keep trying if you can. Easy for me to say, right, with my bloody posh drum kit behind me, and no need of financial secure help from the state, and much more difficult for people that do require it. And I'm very sorry that that's the case, but got to make the art, guys. We've got to make the art. We've got to have our voices heard. It's really important, really, really important.
That again, this is working out so well. You say something that lends itself to my next question. I wanted to ask you a little bit more on one, as like you've a very just to name a few things that Mat has been involved in. Creator and main performer in the play Thalidomide.
I'll say the word. Thalidomide musical.
Thank you. Louder Milk, Kung Fu Fledge, our own Irish soap opera, Fair City.
David Bourne.
Cast-Offs, Crypt Tales, which I'll come back to in a minute, American Horror Story, Freak Show, the list goes on, Silent Witness.
Well, I'm old, Catherine. I'm very old now.
It's a lot of experience.
Now, and I've been out here for 25 years. So, if that had all been in the last 4 years, it'd be bloody impressive. I agree. But it's kind of spread over the last 15. But yeah.
I wanted to ask you about Crypt Tales because that was, I believe, where every actor, writer, director attached to the project was disabled. And you said somewhere along the line in my reading that you said it as one of the things that you were most proud of in your whole professional life. And it was also your first written TV drama.
It was, if not the thing I'm most proud of, because every single disabled person involved went on to get another job in television, which was an immediate success story and intention of the project. It happened with a blip. I got offered a thing by a producer, a non-disabled producer who'd done Snatches, the women-based monologue session. Before, when I say did, she'd produced them. Over the years, I've had so many wishy-washy BBC producers coming up to me with half-baked ideas. I'm like, yeah, count me in, thinking, well, that's never going to happen. And this was but they bloody well came back and said it is happening. And because I've been around for 25 years and always looking out for the new writers and everything, I did have a list of a few people I wanted to approach. Rosaline was one of them. Unfortunately, it ended up because they were English that her disabled traveller voice was too different for them. Anyway, whatever. If it had been an RTE program, it would have been part of it, I'm sure. Anyway, I digress. So yeah, and it was special and wonderful, and they were just about ready for it, and it was monologues, nice and safe. It was BBC Studios, so a tiny budget. We did it on a tiny budget. Everybody got paid ridiculously low fees for it because we all knew we were onto something new, and if it was going to work, it might open a few more doors. Well, stone me if it didn't get nominated for a BAFTA and win a Prix Italia and an NAACP award, which is a diversity media award in America, which is very high profile for anyone who's interested in things that aren't all about white, heterosexual, middle-aged, able-bodied, middle-class men. And so that then I was like, well, what are we going to do next? Because that's my MO. And I thought, the point here is realistic disabled characters in television are only going to happen when disabled writers are allowed into the writers' room of the returning series, the Holby Cities, the famous series that carry on. And then they'll introduce a disabled character into it in a realistic way that we might all recognize as some version of reality. but they're not trusted by the industry because they haven't done anything yet, right? Because they weren't allowed to. Anyway, so I thought duologues, 10 minutes with two people, the very stuff of drama, interaction, isn't enough. I think we need half hours. And I conflabbed with Jack Thorne and Ewan Marshall and a few other people. And they were like, yeah. And then Jack went, make it about something else. So yes, it's all disabled, but make it about something else. What about Seven Deadly Sins? Ping! It was like a light bulb moment. And we were like that. So we're currently just have pitched, it's taken a year and a half, 2 years actually, Seven Deadly Sins, an anthology of 7 different half-hour dramas, each one written by a disabled writer with the lead role for a disabled actor. But they're full dramas, and each one's called Lust or Wrath or Sloth or whatever, the sins. But they're actually stories about disabled people. And that's in with the BBC right now, with them going, so fingers crossed, we may get a commission on that. Because I tell you what, if that happens, all those writers will get work in drama, and that's what this is for. I'm a ducker and a diver and a terrible chancer, and I've done some awful things, Catherine, to enhance my career. Never shat on anyone or stepped on anyone or prevented anybody else from getting anything, I'd like to think, or coerced. None of those are really nasty things. But, I've been an opportunist, obviously. And so my career, I think I'm going to be okay. I can pretty much duck and dive my way through to the end of my life for my own self. But if I don't help blast open a few doors on the way, what am I worth? Nothing as a disabled person. If I just take the glory for myself, that's useless. I've got to, and it's all about the writers. And if I can get 6 other writers stuffed into the television industry and film industry, imagine what that's going to do. Yeah. Quick aside, for all the Irish, my mother, Paddy Glynn, is the 4th mother in a film called Four Mothers with Fionnuala Flanagan as the lead. Yeah, that's coming out next year in Ireland. Please watch it. My mum would be awfully pleased if you did. She plays somebody that might not have a boyfriend, which is fairly scandalous because she's in her 80s. When she came home, the man who moved in upstairs from where she lives and her got together. She's now got a boyfriend. Literally, life imitates art.
Oh, wow.
He's 83 and he's 50. I've checked him out. He's fine. He's safe. But I'm like, that dream, my friends, dream, because that can happen to you too. My mother, who's 83, has a 50-year-old boyfriend with his own BMW, which she's pretty pleased about. So like, I know that's really silly, but what I'm saying is, if you persevere, weird luck can start to happen. And things can change, and you never know where you might be. And suddenly there might be a TV program with your story on it.
Well, we'll have to chalk down your mother's film for the calendars for next year. There was one thing which isn't quite related to that, but there's one thing I was interested in. Something about an episode of Crypt Tales that was meant to be broadcast on Saturday at 10 p.m. on BBC One, and it wasn't broadcast. Was this to do with the Real Deal episode?
Well, I don't know about the broadcast timing scandal. Okay. I literally know nothing about it. Okay. But Disability News Service really tore into us for the Real Deal. Mm-hmm. We thought we were making a savage satire on the benefits system by showing a story of ridiculous nature where a benefits fraud could teach a real disabled person how to act more disabled using the guidelines of the DWP in order to get better benefits. We thought that would highlight how ridiculous it is, whilst not noticing that it led into the acknowledgement that there are benefit cheats and that whole mindset, which is problematic and wrong, was kind of aired. I had it out with John recently of the Disability News Service. We recently made friends again because we fell out over this, in which I said I was a twat, my ego got in the way, you criticised the thing I was so proud of, I refused to see that you were right, I was wrong. We learned an enormous lesson about that, but actually we were trying to do this. He went, yeah, I could see that, but I had to point out how you got it wrong. And I went, yeah, you did. Are we friends again? He went, yes. So they were right. We dropped a ball there. I still think that the previous, I don't know, we edited some of it, and maybe we edited out some of the nuances that explained why it was a savage satire and not falling into the Daily Mail readership problematic situation. I'm sorry we made a mistake. We made a mistake. We acknowledged it. We've moved on. We've learned our lesson.
And again, I will be coming to a close shortly, but
incidentally, if there are any people that wanted to ask questions that didn't get asked or anything people want to know, I'm fine with Catherine or yourself or your colleague passing on emails to me. So do send them if there's something burning that you need to know or want an answer to.
Great, thanks a million, Matt. And your first TV screen drama was American Horror Story Freak Show, and unfortunately I would love to ask you so much more myself on that, and I suppose it lends itself to the final question I wanted to ask you was what do you want to see in the future, because I suppose in productions like that and in big productions like that, and working with non-disabled actors and directors, and I believe with American Horror Story Freak Show that you had some influence over your character Paul, the illustrated seal boy or seal man, and in that you that was originally meant to be a lizard man character, and you said no, I want to take a different direction. And can you speak to me a little bit more about that and about your hopes? I suppose it's a double-pronged question in working. What do we want to see in the future in working, which is where we are not always going to be the majority. We are not always going to be in safe disabled spaces where we will be. Whether it's
where we can enjoy the cut and thrust of an equal playing field, where everybody understands us as much as we understand them, and we can all josh with each other in a way that doesn't require as much protection as it does when people have been bullied and then mainstream people want to start joshing with them. When we're not bullied anymore, when we're equal, when there's an equal playing field, I hope that will happen. I have been in the extraordinary position of often being the first disabled person to do a thing. And I find myself in those weird positions. So yeah, I researched Freak Show so hard. It was part of my early performance art career. It's what grounded me in theatre. So, but I always knew that if I held on to that knowledge, that eventually the TV industry would do a thing and they'd want, inverted commas, real ones. And I thought that might be my in. And lo and behold, it happened. Okay, at least 7 years after I thought it might, but it happened. So when they came to me, I was like, and I'm not going to get this wrong. They know nothing about what they're talking about. They just want the sensationalism of the mainstream imagery that they know. And I know the deep of it. I bet I can pull them around a little bit. So I explained that I'd always been the seal boy and it would be much better if I was the seal boy, but they were like, but we love the tattoos. I'm like, make me the illustrated seal boy then. I refused to have my face tattooed because I know what fake tattooing on set is like. And I'm getting older and I don't want, it's not exactly moisturizing, put it that way. It's like having your face scrubbed old over time. It's disgusting what they do. And they punished me by putting in lines where my character thought he had a pretty face. And there was a lot of like shenanigans going on about like the writing would like be actually talking about the unpopularity of one of the actors and things like that. It was a little weird, to be honest. It'd be a little bit like high school, to be honest, because you're all stuck in and it all gets a bit puerile. But so I eventually became the freak show expert on set. Not for all the good that made. It means I got one guy with ectrodapily, which people call lobster hands, an audition. Unfortunately, he shouted all the way through it, and so they didn't give him the part. I remember thinking, okay, it's the last time I ever want to work with non-disabled people playing disabled people. It's horror. They were a repertory company, so meaning that they had to play the integral people of each subsequent, the hoteliers in the final, and the mass murderers in the next one, and whatever it was. So, that was me trying to give them leeway, wasn't it? If it was done now, I don't think it would happen now. I don't think, even just 10 years later, it would happen now. I think that they would want real ones. In fact, I have a an 8-part series that I'm writing, which does go back to the Freak Show, but I'm banking on being about 70 when it's made, because I think that'll be more poignant. The end of an era, somebody not understanding that their time is finished in against the sea of cultural change. These things are quite poignant, and the stuff of good drama. So my work with Freak Shows is not over. I think I've got one more in me, but not for a while. But yeah, that was a big moment. And as I said, there's a film of the black tap dancer Bojangles tap dancing, but it was filmed at a time when white people were still blacking up, minstrels were still happening, and there's a white guy blacked up behind him doing black man enjoying himself acting. It's highly offensive, and you gotta think, what the fuck was it like for Bojangles in the green room after you all right? Did you find that okay? Yeah, it was all right. What about you? I can't imagine what that must be like. And I'm like, Matt, you did it. You were backstage with people pretending to be disabled. It's the same thing, It's a part of history. It's a transition from one painful thing to another more enlightened thing. I was part of the transition. I was there witnessing it. It's all going in the memoirs. I can't judge it. I can only observe it, really, because judging things, I don't know if you're judgy about things. And what do I want in the future? Very quickly, total equality. Of course, that's what I want. I want no old people to go, we just kissed a man in a wheelchair, like my granddad did when a white woman kissed a black bloke when I was 7 watching television. I mean, thankfully things have changed. I want all the things that we all want. Just equality. That's all I want. Real term equality in television and film and on stage. And I want commissioning editors and power brokers and ne'er-do-wells and everything in between for disabled people to have an equal pop at being these people. We need us shot through the entire infrastructure of society before we get a level playing field. And that's what I want, Catherine. You asked me, so that's what I'm saying. That's what I want. I want a prime minister or the head of the UN to be disabled. I want a newsreader to have cerebral palsy. I want somebody with one leg not to be laughed at a running race. I mean, oh gosh, we could go on, couldn't we?
We're not asking for much, are we?
Not a lot. But we will get there by hook or by crook. And you know what? You can say what you want about Fair City, and I know what you guys really call it. No one else ever did that in 2009. Just brought me in 6 weeks. Look at how disabled I am. I'm not just a bloke in a wheelchair. Okay? I'm a visual intervention in normality. You go, when you see me for the first time. I get it. It's what happens. Okay? And they put me in for 6 weeks. Okay, I was there to soften up the baffled crone image of the nasty lady. But within a week, I was having an affair and saved somebody's life in the park. And I'd fallen in love within 2 weeks. And I was like, chesting up to McLean Burke, going, yeah. I mean, I had the full range of what happens to an actor when they do 6 weeks on a soap. And then, of course, I left to go and work for UNESCO because that's what happens at the end. But what I'm saying is no one else was doing that, not EastEnders, not Coronation Street. I mean, out on a limb, mate, that was like first ever. It was so weird that people didn't even know what to do with it. They didn't have a context for describing it. So it just came and it went. So what I think I'm trying to say is that y'all in Ireland might have a beef about your own system, about how you might find that it's a bit behind in terms of progressiveness, but there are occasional blips, and they should be celebrated as well as us, the people in the barricades, as we must always and still do, culturally speaking. Sorry, I'm wittering on because I can't find an end to what I'm saying. Help me, Catherine.
Well, this brings us to a natural close, and before I let you go, because I'll pass us all on to Damien in a moment to finish this evening for us. I have so enjoyed speaking with you tonight, Matt. I'm sure everyone has really enjoyed tuning in, and for people who might be watching back at a later date. And I suppose what they always ask any artist at the end of any interview is, where can we find you? And do you have anything we should be keeping an eye out for over the next while?
Yes, several things, but I'll only mention 3 of them. Maternal on ITV, It's interesting because I play a kind of naff guy, somebody that people don't really like, and that's quite audacious casting, I think. It's also a completely female-led medical drama. That will be on ITV. I'm in the crazy Chaos, written by Charlie Cavill, who wrote The End of the Fucking World, who was a she and is now a they. And that's for Netflix, with Jeff Goldblum playing Zeus. I play Daedalus, the father of Icarus, the builder of the labyrinth and keeper of the Minotaur, in what can only be described as the craziest version of the Greek stuff that I think anyone's ever seen. And then Best Interests. But I mention it because Sharon Horgan is the lead in it, and we all like Sharon, don't we? And herself and Michael Sheen play a couple. All I'll say is it's a box of tissues per episode, this one. There's a sick child involved. I play a court-appointed person, and all my scenes were with Michael Sheen, lucky me, but I wish I'd had one with Sharon. I got the privilege of watching both of them act, and they're both brilliant actors up close. So Best Interests on BBC, starring Michael Sheen and Sharon Horgan. Netflix's Chaos, starring Jeff Goldblum, loads of other actors, lots of trans, lots of queer, lots of racial differences. That is the one for the kids. And then for the more like returnable, watching TV with the dinner on your lap, maternal ITV, all next year.
Fantastic, Matt. And where can people? I believe you're on active on Twitter and stuff, so people can find.
I'm mostly active on Twitter for beliefs and what I think. Although none of us really know what's going to happen now that Mr. Musk owns it. Facebook, I tend to just talk to old mates about stuff we did in 1994, but you can always contact me there. And Instagram, I just literally am on Instagram to look at other people's photos. I'm not really good at it, sorry, but yeah. So Twitter is if you want me to retweet your thing, or it's an important political thing that you want me to know about or share, Twitter would be the place for that. Yeah.
Cool, lovely. Thank you so much, Matt. And personally, I've really enjoyed this evening, and I'm sure everyone here in ILMI has as well. So I'm going to leave you alone now, and I'm going to ask Damien, please, to come in to close us for this evening.
All right, Damo.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate it. Catherine, you were wonderful. Thanks so much for being the MC tonight. Matt, when we called this series of online workshops Smashing It, you've just done that. It's been about tearing up the script. It's been hilarious, but it's been a call to action, and I really think it's an appropriate point that you've led us to. I didn't think we were going to get someone big enough Fair City, so that's an unexpected treat for us in that regard. And it's just been a pleasure to listen in to everything that you've contributed tonight. And serendipitously, or I can't even say it properly, but you were saying, particularly referencing Dr. Rosalie McDonough, and just to say for anyone who's interested, the next in the Smashing It is next Tuesday, the 8th of November at 7 p.m. We're delighted to be joined by artist and author and activist Dr. Rosie McDonough, and I know a lot of people are there tonight. Yeah, we'll be looking forward to that. So
can I be a part? Can I be a watching participant?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Nina will send you on the link. So I mean,
please do.
Yeah, and it was like that you knew that, and you were bigging up Rosaline as the best intro for our next gig. So I mean,
I had no idea, but I'm pleased. Good.
Yeah. No, so it was just absolutely superb. So I want to thank obviously Matt for his time, for your humour, for your candour, for genuinely for motivating people, and it was really again a moment in time when you were talking about disability arts in Ireland, and obviously we've just had 2 weeks of No Magic Pill, which I think really has broken barriers.
I'm shame we didn't get around to talking about it. Christian's play. I know. Gosh, I wish I'd seen that. I could have had the triumvirate of excellence then. All of us in England, cost of living on Broadway, and No Magic Pill in Dublin. Man, that would have been great.
Well, look, and hopefully there'll be that's just the start for that. But it certainly has laid down a marker for disability arts and disabled actors as well, taking a lead. So it's been brilliant to have you to talk about your expertise and experience in disability arts in Ireland. Thank you so much for everyone for attending. Thank you again to Catherine for being a wonderful MC. And obviously, Thank you very much to Nina for organising and for everyone attending. Nina. And hopefully we'll see you all again on Tuesday, the 8th at 7 p.m. And we'll be joined by Dr. Rosalie McDonough.
All right.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Lots of love to everybody. Crit power. Take care.
Bye-bye.